Hi, everybody. Welcome to Honey Big Productions. I'm Wanda Hall, Creative Director, and we have with us tonight to talk about her new book, Chocolate Drop in Corporate America, Genesis Amaris Kemp. Welcome to Honey Big Productions.
Thank you so much, Wanda, for having me and sharing and holding this space with me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I mean, I think we've had conversations before where I kind of shared with you how excited I am about your book, how important and relevant I think that it is in terms of diversity in the workplace. And so I kind of want to just kind of talk a little bit about your book, what inspired you to write it, what were some of the challenges that you encountered while you were writing it. So why don't we first start off by saying, what motivated you to tell your story?
Just a day in frustration and just saying that enough was enough. Like, I got tired of just being that token Black girl or the face, but not really being able to have a seat at the table to be seen as well as heard.
Wow, wow. So in terms of some of the phrases or terms you use in the book, I was curious, like chocolate drop in corporate America, how did that come about?
Well, I wanted something that was cute and catchy, but also something that would make the readers do a double take and say, what is
Yeah,
that about?
yeah, I did, yes. That's pretty awesome. So tell me a little bit about what was that experience like when you were writing the book and working at the same time? You were writing about some of your experiences at work at the same. What was that like?
In the beginning, it was hard because as I was writing, I had to relive some of the experiences that I had already went through. But then I knew that reliving it was a part of who I was, but it wasn't a breaking point because I made it through. And now that I made it through, I'm able to help other people that look like me, you know, find comfort in knowing that they are not alone.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. So so I know that you are actually out now having conversations and talked with other people. What is that experience like?
It's rewarding to know that other people out there can relate to the book. No matter if they are a chocolate drop, they're a vanilla drop, caramel drop, and no matter if they're in the oil and gas industry or not, they find some type of similarity and parallel, and they're able to open up to me and share their personal testimony of what they went through and say, this is how I made it through, or this is how your book spoke to me in my season.
Oh, that must be awesome. I mean, I think that's one of the things I love about the book. I think that it does create opportunities for these kinds of conversations, which I think are really, really needed in corporate America, particularly now, with
Yeah.
diversity being such a hot topic. So what was it? So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because I think I actually reached out to you when your first book came out. And I had some questions for you then I wanted to ask, but then fast forwarding, you're no longer at that organization. So my question then is, did this story, did your book play any role in that, in your leaving? Yeah.
To be honest, I'm not sure because I was laid off along with a total of 1,900 people. And I'm not sure if they knew about the book because there was only a select few people at the company who I truly trusted and confided in once the book hit the market. Because I didn't tell anyone about the book until it was actually on the market for various reasons. But leading up to the book coming out, I knew I wanted to leave the organization because I felt like something was tugging at my heartstrings where I needed to do more, but I was comfortable where I was at because the benefits were good. The pay was okay. It was paying more than other companies out there because it's oil and gas. So I got a little complacent for a
Yeah.
time period, but then when I reached that point of enough was enough, I was like, it's time to go. So I felt like maybe God, instead of shutting the door, he slammed the door because he's like, I've been telling you to leave,
Yeah.
but you were disobedient. So out of your disobedience, this is what it led to.
In fact, that's one of my other questions. What role did faith play in your writing the book and making the choices that you made?
It played a big role. Faith kept me grounded during this journey because had I not had faith, I don't know where I would be now. And I probably would have reacted out of disgust and anger versus tempering my emotions in order to prove to them that no, I am not that type of woman that you are claiming for me to be. I'm not that angry Black woman. I'm not aggressive,
Yeah.
because that gives them the satisfaction. And when in actuality, they love to slap on a label on a person instead of really getting to know who that person is.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. Although I think sometimes I do fall into the trap of becoming an angry Black woman when I think about some of the things that I do see that's going on. So just kind of ask you some questions about, in terms of what's in the media these days. One of the things that's very frustrating to me is that we're seeing more and more commercials, for example, with brown faces in them. But I wonder about what the diversity is within the workplace, within those media organizations that are putting these commercials out. Do you have like thoughts around that in terms of diversity?
I do. I feel like sometimes you see the Black and brown faces in the commercials so they could appeal to the Black and brown audience. But then if we were to peel the layers of the onion back, would you have those Black and brown people on your board of directors, or is it a Caucasian board where you have your good old boy club and you have your cliques up there, but then you're portraying another picture outwardly, but inwardly you're not conveying that? And you see like a lot of Black and brown people who are with some of those organizations. You see how after the whole Black Lives Matter movement jump started, a lot of them left companies because they're like, you're talking about something that you're not even walking it out.
Mhm. Right.
So to me, I feel like it's a cop out. Like you have to do more than just put some pictures up there. Where is it in your organization? What are you doing to show the people who are on the outside looking in, as well as the people who are in the inside looking out, that no, we're going to be different. We're not just going to have people to be a poster child or a campaign project, but this is how we really want to be portrayed, seen, as well as perceived.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I do feel, I'm a little conflicted, a little torn about it because on one hand, there have been commercials where they've had like a jingle in it, like a song that I liked, and I go and I Google and I like the song and I buy the song and it helps out the artist, I hope. And so I'm torn because on one hand, that's great for the artist, but on the other side, is it really great, helpful for, I'm going to say, for brown people to move forward, to tackle diversity? So I'm kind of like conflicted and torn, about that.
I
You know,
agree, because I feel the same way. It's like you're torn between a rock and a hard place.
right,
Like,
right. And I do wonder, like in terms of your faith, do you, and this might be kind of a stretch question, but do you think that there would ever be a time when diversity will not be an issue? Where, yeah, that's a weird question, isn't it?
I sure do hope so. And that is my prayer, where we could get outside of our outward appearances and our differences and look for ways where we share more commonalities than differences, and where we realize that we all have the same organs and we all bleed red. It's just the outward that is keeping us segregated. And my prayer is that we change the perspectives, but we also change the perspective by having courageous conversations and chatting with people who don't necessarily look like us, but where we could have those candid conversations where we're able to, share our truths, be unapologetic, but also learn and be able to take what we learned and adapt it to who we are. So yes, I do think that the time can come, but it's going to take work, and it's going to take work by everyone in
Yeah,
order to push the narrative.
yeah, I agree, and I think, when you mention faith, I think that's well, helps to sustain me to know that the things that we do can have an impact and there will be an impact at some point in the future. I love that phrase, courageous conversation. But I wonder, is it is it courageous conversations across the aisle only, or courageous conversations within our community?
I believe across the aisle, because if we just have it in our community, then it's building up our community and helping us feel good about ourselves. But if we're not having those courageous conversations with the people who don't look like us, then how can we expect them to be an ally and champion what we are trying to push? Because if we're not showing them and teaching them, then they're not going to really understand where we're coming from unless we are bold and brave to say, this is how I feel when people of your racial group say this and do this. This is how it is perceived by someone who is in the brown community.
Wow. Wow. That is pretty powerful. I agree. I mean, I love that phrase, courageous conversations, because it does open the door to conversations that can actually have an impact and make a difference. So I'm going to steal that phrase. I'm going to be using it from now on. You didn't copyright it, did you? So I can steal it. So I did have some really I love some of the quotes in your book. So I kind of wanted to share some of them, just kind of get your thoughts on them. I love the quote is, what can be done to create relevant change? So just give me your, yeah.
That's more of a quote where I want people to self-reflect and look inwardly and ask themselves, what can I do within my power to create relevant change? How can I shift the narrative? Because if we're not looking at ourselves wholeheartedly, without the blinders, without the fluff and the filters, and we're talking about wanting to do something, but we're not putting it out there, then it's just a hope. It's
Yeah.
just a thought. Nothing is manifesting. So if I were to ask you, Wanda, during this conversation, what can Wanda Hall do to create relevant change in your space now, in your community, and to leave a legacy for future generations to come? And that's tied to your purpose, your calling, your destiny assignment.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think my part of my answer would be having this conversation with you, and sharing what's in your story, what's in your book with others, so they can then think about ways they can affect change, relevant change. That's pretty cool. And another quote that I loved: whether we choose to believe it or not, someone is counting on us to release our inner warrior. I love that. That is awesome. Awesome, awesome. Tell me a little bit about that. Yeah.
So we all have that point where we feel like we're our own hero, and that hero is doing things to save us from maybe mental burnout, physical burnout, or emotional burnout. But while we're saving us, we're helping someone else along the way because we're planting seeds. Because once we are one with ourselves, then we have that confidence where we're going out into the world and we're launching deep. Whether we're sharing our testimonies, that's part of our inner warrior. Whether we're helping someone who is helpless, that's part of being an inner warrior, because you don't know how the impact that you're making to touch that person's life and how they're going to go on and touch other people's lives, which becomes a domino effect. They may never tell you how you impacted their life, but you did. And now they are being the one who is going to go on and impact other lives. And it's going to be passed down. It's going to be the trickle effect. Then being a warrior is being able to stand up and share who you are, own your own truth, and say, yes, I've had mistakes. Yes, I've had slips, trips, and falls, but I did not allow those past experiences to condition me to remain stagnant. I learned from those experiences, and this is how I'm walking out the experiences that I learned. This is how I'm holding on to my truths. This is how I am going out there and telling the people and the world that yes, I'm an imperfect person trying trying to become a better version of myself on a daily basis. And that's a part of my inner warrior. So just because you may see me where I am now, don't think that this is where I always was. I had to go through the mud and crawl just like you had to crawl.
Yeah, yeah. That's pretty powerful. And that was gonna be my next question, what were there days when you didn't feel like a warrior?
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
That's a part of being human. You're gonna have days where you just kind of want to pull the blanket over your eyes and you don't want to get out of bed. You're like, oh gosh, do I have to get up? And then you hit snooze about 3 times on the alarm clock and you're like, oh Jesus.
Gotta get up. Yeah.
Yes. Then
Yeah.
you realize that, hey, you're fortunate to wake up to see another day because there's someone else around the world that didn't have the chance to open their eyes, that can't stand up and get out of their bed. And then when you think about it from that perspective, you're like, I'm truly blessed. So let me shake off this. Let me get out the bed 1 foot at a time. Or I heard this thing that says, feet on the ground, rise and
Yeah.
shine,
Yeah.
shine and rise.
Yeah. Yeah. There are those moments in those days, where you have to muster up some extra energy to get up and out.
Yeah.
I think it's important to share that because I'm sure there are people right now who are feeling that way, or a person who's feeling that way. And I think these words could be an inspiration. That I think there's a saying. I probably shouldn't try to say it. It's a verse in the Bible: after the dawn comes the light.
Yeah, I can relate to that because it
Yeah, yeah,
always gets dark before it gets bright. And sometimes you have to go through those dark seasons in your life, even though they're the hardest seasons. And you're like, why me? But then
yeah,
you have to say, well, it's happening to me, but it's also happening for me. And just
yeah,
know that the season is not always going to be dark. It's just a period of your life that you have to go through in order to get through the other side, kind of like a breakthrough. Like it broke you, but you made it through.
right, right. This is your second book?
Yes, the second edition of Chocolate Drop in Corporate America, From the Pit to the Palace. And then I helped co-author 2 other sharing stories around COVID-19. So I shared my story there. And then I had another author friend of mine who recently put out her book, Don't Let It Ruin the Life of the Party, where she wanted to take a quote from my book, Chocolate Drop in Corporate America, and she wanted me to talk about how I did not let stubbornness keep me in a point where I remained stagnant.
Wow, that is pretty. So another quote lover. Wow, I think that there are lots of. I probably had maybe about 10 or 15 quotes that I loved, but I kind of narrowed it down for the sake of having a shorter conversation. But in thinking about the trials and the tribulations you've gone through, I guess it makes it easier as you move forward through into other challenges, into other these. So I wonder. So after your first book, was the second one easier?
The second one was easier in a sense, but there was also a part where it was harder because writing the second edition of my book was an introduction of a new chapter, chapter 13, and a lot of pain came out of that chapter because my dad got sick in May 2020. Then my dad passed away in November 2020. Then 1 week later, after my dad passed away, I found out that I was being laid off. Then this year in February was the official layoff date, where it was February 15th. That was my last day on payroll. So you could see how I was going through grief from losing a parent. I was going through grief of losing a job after spending 7.5 years working for a Fortune 500 company. And then the door gets slammed. Then not only was the door slammed, but they told me, oh, you have to train somebody for your position. And she's 3 years away from retiring. So I was like, wow. And then I found out that I was the only one on my team being laid off, even though there was a total of 3 of us in the group. set for layoff. They kept the other two and laid me off, and I was the only chocolate drop on my team.
Wow.
And I was like, you know what? I heard the words, you could either be bitter or you could be better. So I chose to be better, and I chose to remind myself then when doors close, other doors open. There's opportunities. There's refreshing sense of a purpose. There's a sense of you coming into who you are. Or as I heard
Yeah.
Michelle Obama, someone blessed me with her book, Becoming.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so I'm becoming new. I'm becoming who I want to be, but had it not been for those hard seasons and trials, where would I be? And I was like, some people could easily have lost it all because you're like, oh, my dad just died. Oh, now my income is gone. Oh, like you could have this huff and puff like the big bad wolf, or you could choose to just smile despite the pain and know that things are going to be okay. You may not know when things will get back to normal, but as long as you have faith and you're manifesting positivity, then things will fall into place. Not on your timetable, but on his timetable.
Yeah. Yeah. This is saying, God's always on time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Um, so the other question I was going to ask, and I think we talked a little bit about this, is when we start comparing ourselves to others, we begin to lose our identity. And I want you to talk a little bit about that, and then, if you can relate it to what's happening in the world today, that would be fantastic in terms of, Black Lives Matter movement.
Yes. So when we start to compare ourselves to people who were like, oh man, he has a nice job, or she has an awesome job. I would love to do that. Or, oh my gosh, their house is beautiful. Or you're like, oh man, they're making six figures and I'm making X figures, but I'm doing the same work, or I'm doing twice as much as they're doing, but not making nearly as much as what they're making. Or you see this picture perfect couple over there, but you may not know what's going on behind closed
Right.
doors. Their optics speak volumes, but behind closed doors, they may be hanging on by a thread. Their marriage may be failing, or
Right.
they may have lost a child or whatever. But we see them putting on this facade, not knowing what's behind the facade, not knowing that they're hurting, not knowing that they're trying to get validation and appease people just as much as we are. But we only see the glamorous things, but you don't see what's behind the glamorous thing. So then we fall into the cycle of comparison where we're vying for validation of external factors instead of checking in with our internal self and realizing that we were each created in a masterpiece. We're all unique. And if you take ownership of your personal strengths, your gifts, your talent, your purpose, then you run your race, and you're going to run your race far better than if you try to occupy somebody else's lane.
Yeah. I was a track star in high school, and I learned that really fast. You have to run your race. You can't run somebody else's, because you can't win that.
Mhm.
Um, so I
And
kind of want.
now,
Mhm.
oh, sorry, I was going to answer the second part of it because you wanted me to tie it into what's happening now, the Black Lives
Yes,
Matter.
exactly.
So, whenever the Black Lives Matter came about, there were so many negative connotations around it because people saw, oh, they're burning down their own community, they're killing people, they're looting and whatnot. But people fail to realize, okay, why did the Black Lives Matter movement start?
Right.
And not everyone who is supporting the Black Lives Matter movement supports people burning down buildings, looting stores, and all of that. The reason why they say Black Lives Matter is not to denounce that all lives don't matter. They are saying that they are sick and tired of having somebody in their community killed because of the color of their skin. They're sick and tired of having these unconscious biases and preconceived notions put on them because they woke up Black and they can't change who they were born to and who they were birthed through. And just because they are African American in the Black and brown community does not mean that they are not as educated as somebody from the opposing point. It does not mean that their life is not as valuable as someone who is Caucasian, Indian, Native American, or whatever the case may be. And not all Black people are the same. We don't all like fried chicken. We don't all like watermelon. We
Right.
don't all like the same thing. And I see the media wanted to portray a certain image, but they weren't showing everything collectively. They were showing the things that were portrayed as negative because what do they say in the media? As my husband would say, sex, drugs, and something else sells. Those are the top sellers in media.
Yeah.
Oh, and drama. Sex,
Yeah.
drugs, and drama sells. So
Right.
if they saw the drama, they saw everything intensifying, then they're like, oh, look, see, I told you, look at that Black group of people.
Yeah.
See, they're
Yeah.
not even doing anything to help their community. They're killing each other. They're killing their own people. They're burning down their own communities. They're looting. Yeah. See, that's why we can't condone this behavior.
Right.
That's why they're in the predicament that they're in now. When
Right.
no, if you woke up in the body of a Caucasian person or someone who is non-Black or brown, have you ever had to wonder what it was like to be an African American person? Have you had to worry about driving down the street in your car, wondering if you were going to get pulled over for DWB, driving while Black, or because they thought that the car that you were driving was stolen, or they thought that you couldn't live in the neighborhood that you lived in, or they thought that, oh, well, that's a gangbanger, that's a rapist, that's a murderer. Oh, yep, that's a rapper.
Drug dealer.
Or, yeah, drug dealer. Or yep, that's just another girl over there with a big booty and some big boobs trying to shake it. Like, there's so many superficial stereotypes with the Black race that I felt like when the Black Lives Matter jumped off, we just said it was enough was enough.
Yeah.
And it was time for us to speak out. But then you hear the whoosh, whiplash and everyone saying, all lives matter.
Yeah.
And you saw all the thing, and they were missing the point of why people were saying Black Lives Matter.
Yeah. Yeah, I think some people, they think they were missing it in some ways on purpose because they didn't want to hear it. It's interesting because, then we had, what happened on January 6th, and, that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? Had that group been predominantly brown people, that would have ended totally different.
Oh, yeah. Different. It would have been a lot of bloodshed.
Yeah. Yeah. But now we're not going to investigate it because it's not time to investigate that. I could go on about that one, but I won't. We don't have enough time to do that. So I wanted to then just kind of find out what's going on with you now. Like, what's next? After you've written the books. Now, actually, before we do that, what was the experience of writing a book like? What was it like when you actually looked at your book for the very first time and felt like, oh my God, I wrote this? What was that feeling like?
So it was amazing. And I'm reaching for it because I keep this copy as, it says my not for sale copy. This was my proof copy when I first got it. And I literally screamed. I was like,
so awesome.
It's mine. It's my baby. It's my hand. And when I was going through doing the red lines and things I wanted to edit or tell the publisher about, or like, oh, let's capitalize this because I want the emphasis here. All the emotions kind of came rushing in all at once, and I was excited. I was also angry at the time too, because even though my book came out and it was something to be proud of because it's a part of me, I had to remind myself that my father's in the hospital, laying in the hospital, trying to get better. So I wanted to be selfless versus selfish because my dad was a part of me, and anyone who met my dad and met me would say they were two peas in a pod. So it's like my book came out, and the one person that I wanted to go to lunch with and celebrate with, I couldn't because he was in the hospital. And when I think about it, it just brings tears to my eyes because I said, had it not been for COVID, I truly believe that my dad will be here now, because when he went to the hospital, it was during the time as COVID, and I felt like all the people cared about was COVID, COVID this, COVID
Oh,
that,
okay,
but they
okay.
didn't care about somebody who was diabetic, who went in for his blood sugar levels being elevated. They didn't care about other factors that played into it. It's like, oh, COVID, COVID, COVID. And I'm like, what about the people
Yeah,
who don't have COVID?
yeah,
Should they suffer because other people have COVID? A patient is still a patient at the
yeah,
end of the day.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges with COVID. It's not so much as that, not only the people who have it suffering, but the fact that they're taking healthcare from other places as well. So
Yeah.
it's funny when people announce, they don't want to get the vaccine, or they don't want to wear the mask. It's not really about you. It's about the people around you, you know? So, yes, I can definitely appreciate that. So in terms of, encouraging someone who is thinking of writing a book, what would you say to encourage them?
I would tell them to start now and don't wait for everything to be in place. For my first book, I wrote the entire thing on my cell phone because I did
Wow.
not have
Wow.
a
Okay.
laptop.
Okay.
So I feel like use the resources that you have and don't make excuses, because we all have a cell phone. There are powerful apps out there. Like I just use a note app and I
Mhm.
just wrote it there. And whenever it came time to submit it, my publisher's like, you can't submit it with this. And so my husband bought me a laptop, my first MacBook. I've wanted one forever. And it just happened that at the time I needed a laptop, it was on sale at Costco. And I was like, look at God. I was like, go ahead, God provided.
Wow. Wow. Exactly. Exactly.
And it's just been amazing. And I would tell people out there who are aspiring to do something is never allow your dreams to diminish because other people can't see the value of your dream. Your dream and vision was placed inside of you for a particular reason and purpose, and sometimes you have to wait to release your dreams to other people because there are dream killers out there. So when I was writing my book, there was only a few people that knew I was writing my book. And once it actually hit the market, I was like, okay, the proof is in the pudding. Now it's out there. Now I can open my mouth and tell other people about it. I would also encourage you, if you're aspiring to write something, then get a journal and just start writing on a daily basis, and you'll be surprised on how the things that you write on a daily basis could easily morph into a book.
Wow. That's pretty cool, actually. I love that you can't give it to us in notes. You got to put it in a real file and send it to us. Why? It's very, very cool. Thank you for that. Shelves, what's next for you?
Now, I really want to make a companion workbook to go with my book. I was in the process of starting it and I had some stuff there, but it's just the template just wasn't hitting the way I wanted it to hit. So I'm now going back to square one and just recalibrating, seeing, okay, how do I want my template to be? Do I want to use something that's already out there? Do I want to make something from scratch? Because I want my workbook to be impactful. I want it to include, the reflection quotes from the book. I want it to have discovery exercises where not only can the readers follow along with the book, but they're also going through their own personal journey and stance of how they're dealing with their life and their circumstances, and how it's kind of paralleling to the book.
That's excellent.
Because
Mhm.
I truly believe whenever somebody is reading the book, they should get something out of it that they're putting in, because they're putting in their time to read your story. So in return, they should get out of it something that will help them ignite and find a spark where it will cause them to go out and do something or change
That's
or
excellent.
etc. So
Yeah.
I want to be intentional with this workbook because it's a reflection of me, it's a reflection of the book, and I want to give something that the people could have as something tangible where they could say, this is going to be my playbook to help me go from point A to point B.
Wow, that is awesome. I love that. I mean, that is really, really, I mean, when I read the book, I had highlights. I kind of highlighted things that, so I think having a workbook and giving people the opportunity to create playbook is fantastic. Um, Really, really, really fantastic. I want to thank you for taking the time this afternoon. I'm looking forward to doing some more things with you. Do you want to tell anyone where they can get your book?
Yes. So Chocolate Drop in Corporate America, From the Pit to the Palace, is available on Amazon, Book Mecca, Shelves Bookstore, and some of the other brick and mortar stores such as Barnes and Nobles, Books a Million, and etc. I also want to encourage you to please, please leave me a review once you have completed the book, whether it's on Amazon or Goodreads, because to me, feedback is a gift, and that's how I'm going to know how the book impacted you. And, it's going to also help me improve my craft as a writer, because if no one gives you feedback, then you're still going to remain in the current situation that you're in. And for those of you who want to personally reach me, you can reach me at Genesis, Genesis, Amaris, Amaris, Kemp, Kemp, at gmail.com.
Fantastic. And we'll put all that link in the bottom down below so people can find it. Again, thank you very much for spending time with us this afternoon. Really, really appreciate it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanda.